choices we make, the worlds we build, they also confront us with questions. How do we know what is real?
So what's your podcast about?
Oh, it's about psychology, true crime, supernatural stuff, the occasional paranormal or philosophical rant.
Well, maybe I could check it out sometime.
It's time! They knew, and they let it happen! 2 kids! We gotta nail these scumbags! We gotta show people that nobody can get away with this!
What you do, what you become is not my concern. The world is full of so-called men like you. And in a perfect world, everything we do comes with a price. This ain't a perfect world. People do bad things. Most of the time it goes unpunished. This ain't one of them times.
Better a millstone be hung around your neck and you be cast into the sea, and that you should never hurt one of these little ones.
Why? The how and the who is just scenery for the public. Oswald, Ruby, Cuba, the mafia. Keeps them guessing like some kind of parlor game, prevents them from asking the most important question, why? Why? Who benefited? Who has the power to cover it up?
Now, do we all agree that what we are dealing with is vampire?
2 million children a year are being sucked into the deepest recesses of hell.
Well, remember this, ladies and gentlemen. It's an old phrase, basically anonymous. But politicians are a lot like diapers. They should be changed frequently and for the same reason. Keep that in mind next time you vote.
This is your nautical lantern on the dangerous seas of darkness. Let's push off from the placid shore of the status quo and explore what's beyond the horizon. I am your host, BT, and this is Truth and Shadow, your podcast of the supernatural.
There are moments when evil does not hide because it knows it no longer has to. That may be the most terrifying thing about modern life. Not that evil exists. Not that corruption thrives. Not even that powerful men gather in private rooms and make private bargains while the rest of the world sleeps. What is terrifying is that the veil has grown so thin, and the public conscience so weak, that the truth can stand in broad daylight wearing a mask made of symbols, scandal, sex, spectacle, and power, and still be dismissed as background noise. We live in an age where the bizarre has become ordinary, where the language of conspiracy has been weaponized so thoroughly that even asking basic questions can make a man sound mad. Where grotesque moral rot is processed through the machinery of entertainment until it loses its sting. A trafficking network becomes a news cycle, a blackmail ring becomes a meme, ritualistic imagery becomes art. The degradation of innocence becomes one more item in an endless scroll placed somewhere between celebrity gossip and war footage and advertisements for things no one needs. And that is how the machine survives. Not by denying the darkness outright, but by flooding the senses, by burying signal under noise, by making outreach cheap and constant until nothing shocks the conscience anymore. Because if everything is urgent, nothing is sacred. If every scandal is interchangeable, then no revelation becomes a reckoning. It all passes, it all dissolves. The names change, the headlines shift. The algorithms move on. And somewhere in the shadows, the people who profit from confusion keep building their kingdoms. That is the real atmosphere of the age. Not simple deception, but saturation. In the 19th century, men like Crowley understood something about this long before the modern media perfected it. He understood that transgression has power, that symbols matter, that the inversion of the holy is not random rebellion, it's a kind of liturgy, a parody of worship. A dark sacrament for a civilization that has forgotten how to kneel before anything except appetite. Crowley did not invent this impulse. He simply gave it a new name. It was the will enthroned, desire unchained, taboo shattered, self-made sovereign. The old rebellion and a new, modern tongue. Not thy will be done, but mine. And once that creed escapes the fringes and enters the bloodstream of a civilization, it changes everything. Because then power is no longer restrained by innocence. Influence is no longer restrained by virtue. Wealth is no longer restrained by accountability. The elite no longer have to gather in candlelit chambers chanting ancient memes to participate in something occult in the truest sense of the word. They only need to treat other human beings as consumable. They only need to turn the vulnerable into currency. They only need to believe that consequence is for lesser men. That is where the esoteric and the political and the criminal begin to converge. Not always in the theatrical sense people imagine, not always with robes, altars, signs. Sometimes it looks far more ordinary than that. A flight log, a sealed file, a compromised journalist, a prosecutor who hesitates, a prince, a president, a billionaire, a fixer, a scientist, a celebrity, a donor. Networks of access, networks of appetite, networks of silence, and over all of it, a cultural spell. A cultural spell that says, don't look too long, don't connect too much, don't ask who benefits, don't ask what kind of civilization produces this. Because if you do, you start to see the pattern, and the pattern is not merely criminal, it is spiritual. A society does not descend into this kind of sickness accidentally. It gets there in stages. First it laughs at innocence, and then it commercializes lust. Then it desacralizes the body. Then it teaches children that identity is plastic, morality is preference, and desire, your destiny. Then it removes shame from what ought to shame us and attaches shame to anyone who resists it. Then, when the predators rise from the cracks clothed in status and immunity, the culture has already been catechized into confusion. It no longer knows how to call evil by its name. That is why distraction matters so much. Distraction is not just a bad habit, it is a method of control. Keep the population overstimulated, outraged, exhausted, entertained, and they will lose the strength required for moral focus. They will know fragments of everything and the meaning of nothing. They will possess data without wisdom, evidence without judgment, suspicion without courage. They will see the world breaking apart and still hesitate to identify the hands on the wheel. And maybe that is the deepest terror. Not that truth is hidden, but that truth is costly. To really see what kind of world this is, you have to surrender some comforting illusions. You have to admit that evil is often protected by institutions. That prestige is not just a sign of purity, that wealth often purchases insulation. That the people shaping culture may not love the civilization they inherited, and deeper still, you have to admit that beneath all the human corruption, there is an older war being fought. A war against image. Against man, against innocence, against the family, against memory, against the very idea that there is a moral structure built into reality by a holy God. Because once you believe that, the modern world starts to make a terrible kind of sense. It's the mockery of the sacred, the glamour of perversion, the trafficking of bodies, the ritual humiliation of truth, if you will. The constant pressure to accept contradiction, to ignore intuition, and to treat conscience as pathology, and even the perversion as a liberation. These are not isolated absurdities. They are signs of a civilization under siege from within. It's a civilization being taught to love its chains. But there's one thing the darkness still fears. The light. The truth. Not the cheap light of exposure alone, though that matters. Not merely leaks and files and courtroom testimony and investigative courage. Though God knows we need all of that. I mean the deeper light. Moral clarity. The kind that cannot be hypnotized. The kind that remembers good and evil are real categories. The kind that knows children are not collateral. Symbols are not neutral. Corruption is not accidental. And truth is not whatever survives the public relations cycle. That light, that truth, does not come from the machine. It does not come from the elite. It does not come from the architects of distraction. It comes from souls that refuse to be enchanted, souls anchored in something older than the empire of appetite, souls that believe the universe is not finally ruled by blackmail, impulse, or hidden hands, but by a judge who sees it all. And that means the story is not over, because the lie, however vast, is still a lie. The spell can break, the hidden thing can be brought into the open, and the world that feeds on innocence, secrecy, and distraction can still be called out for what they are. It's not progress, it's not liberation, it's not sophistication. It is darkness. It is evil organized and enthroned. And it's waiting for people of conscience to remember that seeing clearly is the beginning of resistance. Ancient texts whisper about Moloch, about fire, about children, about power purchased with innocent blood. People wish the truth of history would just vanish, yet the breadcrumbs are always there. Centuries pass, secret societies form, symbols resurface. Aleister Crowley smiles at the edge of the abyss, calling darkness illumination. Fast forward and we see uncovered documented networks of exploitation. Real victims, real crimes, real elites entangled in the Epstein scandal. Facts. But here's the question that keeps coming back to me. When power gathers in secret, when morality becomes negotiable, are we watching isolated corruption or an ancient pattern repeating itself? Joining us to expose the horrors and shed some light in the darkness, offer some truth in a world of shadows, is one who has looked into the abyss, found answers. He is the ancient assessor, scandal scout, and gumshoe. William, welcome back to Truth and Shadow Podcast.
Brandon, great to be with you again. Thanks for the invite.
So let's just talk about what you've been up to and what's going on in the world of William Ramsey Investigates.
Well, I think everything changed for me. I think on the 30th of January, when this new 3 million document thing dropped, and I wasn't anticipating it. I didn't know what was going on. I was just starting to tinker around. And then I went, wow, these are really incredible. This is really something else. I didn't really know. I know that there were redactions and stuff, but I've really spent the last 2 weeks really grinding through these documents. And I've found a lot of things that are, needless to say, are unnerving, to say the least. And a lot of the stuff that comports with my earlier research into, like you mentioned at the intro, secret societies, Crowley, hidden power, this darkness as illumination. Great intro too. So that's kind of what's changed. And I think it's like it was like things that I've seen kind of fit. So I've really tried to expand my understanding of what's in those dark drops.
Yeah. See, I was looking at some of these ideas and really seeming to pick up an ancient idea, the idea of secret societies and the continuation of literal ritual sacrifice, ritual satanic abuse. And when I was looking at that, I couldn't help but get this idea in my mind that there was some kind of connection. But let's look back at some of these secret societies and some of these rituals that go back far enough that you've uncovered. Maybe start with Crowley or go back if you want.
Yeah, they all tried to tie themselves all the way back to the Babylonian religions. So even Masonry bounces from the present through Egypt to Babylon. And all of these gods that came out of the Middle East, these kind of secret things, Molech and the androgyne goat god of Baphomet, and these kind of things have always been around. I guess they're always just endemic parts of civilization, but they're secrets, so they don't come to the surface as often. And it's usually you don't get into these groups unless you've been initiated in one way or the other. So there's always this kind of you get drawn in over time to these groups, is what I've learned. But Crowley was definitely part of that, like the Ordo Templi Orientis. The Oriental is what it is. It's like we're going back to the Orient. You know, that's what the kind of cute name of the East or the Middle East used to be. It's kind of dropped off in kind of its modern usage. But they believed in all this stuff and all this kind of weird sex magic and sex rituals and all that stuff that Crowley wrote about. That he talked about child sacrifice. I mean, I can pull the document up. I've written the document. It's really about him mentioning these horrible things they do to kids, and it's in his writings, and it's conveniently covered up by a lot of his pro Crowley type people, and it's also it's not addressed or seen much like maybe what's in the Epstein thing. It's not of overt concern maybe, or people just gloss over it. But it is a component of his religion of Thelema. You can look up Liber 66. It talks about sacrifice and the blood and this distortion of things. This, like you mentioned, the darkness is illumination, where the blood is wine. Like nobody would make that connection unless you're like perverting things, perverting reality. So that's kind of like, I mean, you can trace, like you said, I think you can just keep tracing it all. The Knights Templar arguably brought back all this dark religion to the West. And that's where that Baphomet comes from. And that's why Jacques de Molay, who was killed on Friday the 13th, is kind of like lionized in the Masonic kind of culture. So this stuff has never gone away. And I think it's always been part of it is this kind of secret component of our societies where they, because of their connections in this kind of black magic environment, they can get away with stuff because they're used to keeping secrets. They've done secret things together, and it becomes a binding thing. So it's a phenomenon that binds them together, much like a mob or the mafia or any other kind of illegal group. They're bound together by their criminal acts and their dark acts. So I think that's what we're seeing with the Epstein files and Epstein, what I'm calling now the Epstein network.
Right. Yeah. There's an odd twist of some kind of sacred sacrament. Where if you follow some of the religions of the world that follow and behave, follow these principles of doing good and serving, the poor, the widow, the orphan, etc. And they have their own sacraments that are developed within the religious systems, the Eucharist, for example, within Catholicism. And then you take and you look at, like the Church of Satan, they have a dark sacrament where it's a perversion of the real one, a destruction of the host and then a warping. But here, we're not looking at like the bread that's the flesh of Christ. We're looking at human children being used as the flesh in this sacrament and their blood laced with that most stressful induced adrenaline that can ever be added to it.
It sure seems like it. I mean, I couldn't find direct evidence, but it's all hinting towards that. These children are missing. They're taken from the, like at least the victim's testimony, the infants are taken from either induced birth, which is really even scarier, or at birth. And I don't know if these children, I mean, the teens, they seem like there's one that's 16 who had a baby. They don't seem to ever have contact with that child again. So that seems to be the case. And it brings to mind this whole Crowley's Cakes of Light, right? Which is a core component, really, of his Gnostic Mass, which is kind of the intro to the dark occult of Crowley style. But that has, blood and male bodily fluids supposed to be mixed into it to do it. So that's just what we know of. So I think that a lot of, if these people are experienced occultists, then it only gets darker there. And I think everything hints towards that from what I've seen.
Yeah, there's something going on beyond the surface. I never think anything is just surface level deep. There's always something that's pushing this. And like you'd said earlier, they're bound by their misdeeds. And now it's digital documents. I mean, we're not talking about simply people who may be upstanding members of society going, oh yeah, this guy over here, he's done this, this, and this, and here's the proof, which is, maybe circumstantial at best. But now we've got literal documentation, human living victims and situations and circumstances that point that this is a much darker thing.
International. It seems like there's moving around. It's not just, I mean, the interesting is like when I was studying Epstein back in the day when he was arrested, there was just like, oh, he's in Palm Beach. And then people are like, oh, no, he's not. Then there's this island. And then there's this Manhattan mansion. And then there's this thing in New Mexico. And now it seems like it's all over the place. And I mean, you really can see the ties of his network when in his communications, because he's not like a shut-in. He's constantly communicating with people and sending emails and things like that and arranging meetings. Come to the island for 10 days, he says to Bannon at one point. You have to spend time face to face. Like, why do you need to spend time face to face? I mean, granted, those are all very important kind of like binding things to, if you're in business with somebody or something, those are all important. But also the fact that he wants people to come to the island, whatever is going on there. But the international scope of it really is remarkable, and how many people are falling. There's been people arrested in France, Norway, Romania is an issue. People are quitting their jobs here in the state left and right. Romler, I think, was one of these people who was involved with Epstein. She just left her position. So those are ones that are known. England too. Mandelson is his name. So you're seeing this kind of like unraveling of the secret arrangements and all this stuff because of the torture and the kids that are involved. And one of the myths that they promoted, which I think is completely eviscerated or annihilated by these emails, is that they were just young kids. They're like Lolita, 16, 17-year-old kids. No. There are stories of 11, 10, 9-year-olds, and babies and stuff like that. So it's much worse than that. And I think it's maybe easier in the human mind to like say, oh, they're just like teen kids, but I think that they've been lying. They're all lying, and they've been lying forever. They're still lying because like I'm trying to follow up with what's going on in the mass media, and they're just treating this like it's nothing. And that seems to be the case. They're reporting on certain things here and there, but they're not getting into the grittier details.
Yeah, we should be looking at the Dow numbers, right?
Right. I mean, and the Dow's under 50,000, so I guess we can talk about it according to Pondy. She's not going to outlive this stuff, guys. I mean, or Brandon. Like, she's not going to outlive that statement, and neither is Kash Patel when he's saying publicly in Congress, if I would have saw something, I would have prosecuted. This is a massive amount of criminal acts. There's like people talking about art theft and art manipulation and values, because art is used as a basis for the loans and stuff that they get, and they're misstating the art funds and stuff like that, or the value of art. And there's all kinds of like inside jobs and things about like the war is going to be a moneymaker in Ukraine. Like these are things that led to the deaths of millions of people. So it's all being exposed, and there's just great researchers out there. I'm trying to keep research myself, but these other really intrepid and kind of stalwart researchers are great. There's so many, and you can check them out on I try to retweet them so people familiarize not with that tweet, but that researcher. So if you go through, since I've been posting stuff since the 30th, I would recommend people go to my X file and just scan it. Just go all the way through, look at the researchers, click on those, follow them. And those are some of the best people kind of looking through it. And they're not reposting stuff. They're actually reading the documents for whatever, code word or whatever they're using to do it. So it's a painstaking process, but it's happening. They structured everything in the outlay to. I mean, I think it's pretty overt and evident that they structured everything so that it would be hard to go through, because they have like a rudimentary search function on justice.gov, which is a total joke, but like you only get 10 responses at a time. Then you have to click through again and again and again. It's just so stupid. It's intentional. It's not stupid. And that's why the redactions are there. And that's why like these things, they're making the actual members of Congress go to the DOJ to like look at stuff. Like they could have data processing and data mining and all these things are readily available now. So they did it intentionally. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of these things going on reminds me of a couple of things from way back in what was it? The early 1980s. We had the story, McMartin Preschool. You remember this one? The McMartin Preschool trial and the underground tunnels and animal sacrifice. And I'm pretty sure other kinds of sacrifices going on besides just animals. But, you're looking at these ideas in these case studies back when we were dealing with the Satanic Panic and the results of these investigations. And we're finding out that while it's not 100% of all of the claims are substantiated, right? But we get to this one, right? We get to this preschool and we start looking at some of the similarities between it and then some of the stuff that's in the documents that involve children. And this is where we're at, right? Are we looking at something that's like this, another satanic panic?
Yeah, it's going to make people panic, that's for sure. They're minimizing it now. It's interesting because you use that term, and I've seen these things. The looking into the Epstein files is now a moral panic. So it's a kind of corollary to the satanic panic. And and they're doing it like, why are you all so whacked out? And it feels the exact same way that the satanic panic kind of purveyors come at you. Like, why are you panicking? Well, people are being killed. Like there's literal dead bodies around, guys. And it's like McMartin, like it's furtive and secretive, and there's groups, and it's really dark. It's like Rosemary's Baby or something, because some of these people have been co-opted or they're part of the cult. They're part of like the capital C cult or network. And they're always going to minimize and they're always going to gaslight you. Or I've used this in another talk I had today, which is the game Werewolf, where like this, you talk about secret societies going all the way back. It's endemic in human history, but it's also a means of information monopoly, so that they can always win because they're on the inside and they're playing that inside information that they share among themselves against the rest of the population. And the game Werewolf was devised by a guy in Russia. They sit in a circle, two guys become the werewolf. Nobody knows who they are. Everybody closes their eyes. And the werewolf slowly pluck off people by just tapping them on the shoulder so they come out of the circle. Then everybody opens their eyes, and then they all joke around and see who the werewolf is. And they never find it. And what they found if they played this a lot is that the werewolves always won, and what that kind of extrapolates to, the takeaway is that it shows that people with inside information will always win against the herd or the general population. And that's a maintenance of power, right? So the figurative, like killing off, is almost like in the literal world, it's almost kind of like that. It's like you can abscond with the money because we got the inside information and we're giving you the fake information. So I think that that's like the dynamic that's happened with Epstein, and just in the use and the social implications of all secret societies.
Yeah, I mean, that's like I said. If we look at other things that are similar, we see a lot of the same signs and the things that are going on, right? This kind of behavior, these kind of actions, they're clearly, an orchestrated events designed to craft blackmail. I mean, where it's like, we participate in this thing and you can't say nothing to nobody because we'll just show everybody the videos of you doing wrong. And it's consistent, that this is how people are bound together. We talked about that earlier. But I'm looking at all these cases, the satanic ritual abuse stuff. It's not just in the United States. We had the one, Kern County, California also had a big one. But Massachusetts, there was a daycare in Massachusetts. There was a daycare in Scotland. There was
one in Florida that covered by Chite in the witch hunt narrative. That was all validated, by the way.
It's weird. It's like all of these, they're after little children.
And the finders, too, were after children. And there was SRA stuff there, too. Goats and weird stuff. And like they killed a goat and they had to do bloods. That's what came out, But like the kids were clearly being moved around in a van. In the 70s, I think, is when they got caught in Florida. These are just the ones that come to the surface. So the Children of God is another one. That ostensibly it's like, we're a Christian church. No, this is like a pedophile cult. I think River Phoenix said he was no longer a virgin after he was 5 years old. So, and there's a lot of implications there. It seemed like from stories that are coming to me, this is like intentional trauma, intentional traumatic mind control stuff where they disassociate and they really put the kids, like this is another thing the Satanists do, is like they're intentionally traumatizing them. And that's definitely indicative of the Epstein files and everything, and Epstein's network. They're traumatized. Almost every of those girls that have come out are traumatized, intentionally. I think that's part of the thing. So it's not like, hey, come in, we're going to have a happy, orgy or whatever, sexual encounter or whatever. I think the traumatization and the dehumanization is a very important aspect of these satanic networks and the Epstein network.
Yeah, a while back I was looking at this psychologist. He created a document. I cannot remember. It's a 4-letter acronym for cults and the way that they abuse and they maintain control over people. So basically, the simple things, they say who you can have sex with, who you can hang out with.
Oh, bite model?
That's it. It's the bite model, right?
Steve Hassan, yeah.
Yeah. This is a real good one, the bite model, talking about. And anybody who's familiar with some psychology and they listen to the victims who have been, interviewed either in full or in part, the things that they talk about fits this guy's model to a T.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I wish I could remember what the acronyms stand for, but it's just he's pretty much written the book about it because and a lot of times these guys have been through it. He went through the Moonies and all that stuff, the love bombing and the manipulation. And we're separate from them. These are all kind of cult mechanics. And what distinguishes a cult from like a bowling club or something like that, they all present themselves as a bowling club, but nobody, like the famous statement is, nobody in a cult knows they're in a cult, They don't know it. They think they're just part of a group of special people.
Yeah, the BITE model stands for behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. And then from there, there's actually like 100 things for each of those 4 letters.
They've got it down, like in some of these guys. And I think Epstein is really interesting, too, is because he was associated I call it a network now, but like Lawrence Krauss was one of his associates. They all were on Joe Rogan's like podcast, which is really weird. But he started the Origins thing, and on his board of directors was a woman by the name of Loftus, who also was an expert for the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, and also sat as the board member of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, where they said that all these people who were abused or in SRA were making it up, right? And it was a very well, and Jolly and West is on there, which is a real huge tell, but it's a real attempt to cover this up or ridicule it, minimize. It's like almost every kind of like propaganda technique in the book has been put out there. You're lying, you're crazy, to try to, deflect or distract from the reality of like horrible stuff, incest, sexual abuse, the SRA stuff. So it's easy to get like people who don't know what the False Memory Syndrome Foundation really is about, like at first glance, they're like, oh, well, this seems credible. And then you look at the people on the board and the people who were saying, and you're like, wow, this is really bad. Because Loftus is a real piece of work. And just the fact she's associated in the Epstein network is a real huge tell.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is it's, what was one of the other really big things is names, naming. What was I going to say with that? So with the victims, they recently dropped a list of the victims' names, except for one was still redacted, if I remember correctly, which is really an interesting way, because when you look at propaganda and then you look at, oddly enough, you dig into the bite model, one of those things is that kind of action, putting a victim out on blast. So everybody knows that they were a victim of a specific behavior in order to silence them.
Yeah, I think it's really scary. It's so strange, the drops that they really protected. Like, this is the Justice Department, guys. They protected the pedophiles or the abusers. And it's clearly that they did it because there's like references to torture, and then you're like blacking out this person's name. And it doesn't have the name of the victim. So this isn't in the interest of justice at a very elementary level. And so it's like they're re-abusing. These poor girls have probably just been re-abused and abused since their original abuse. It's crazy. And I actually read into like they had laws that were passed to try to kind of balance the system out so they wouldn't. It was called the Victims' Rights Act or something like that, where the women would be able to testify in court, or people who were abused. And a lot of those girls took the chance when Ghislaine Maxwell, they went out and talked about their abuse, and it's probably cathartic, but it's a nice change. And I think the exposure is really important, but I feel sorry for the victims. But like the DOJ's, I don't know how these people's reputations are going to survive. Bondi, Blanche, Kash Patel, or Bongino, like it's really, 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 really bad. And they had that information. There's a document, I don't know if you know this, but from March 2025, that's like an FBI document that says redact everybody who's a celebrity, a political leader, and ex-presidents, like presidents plural. So that's what they've been doing for a year. And they still bungled it. They did a total government job. Like, there's enough information there to show how bad it is, but like, it's this, they're re-abusing these people again. And it's a total spit in the face of the American people too. It's really bad.
It is. It's a two-tiered justice system.
For sure.
And you would be somebody who would stand against that, being, a lawyer yourself. I mean, come on, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just a total joke. They've been covering it up for a long time. And I think it goes back to your kind of theme and your wanting to look into the secret society mechanics. They've probably taken secret, oaths, much like a Mason. To get to the 33rd level, you have to take 33 different rituals and different oaths. So it's fairly sophisticated. And something tells me that it's the same thing that's going on with this, is these guys have taken oaths of secrecy or silence. And so they don't want to disclose this network because it's empowered them. Look at the power of Epstein, who some people say he's not really that smart. I kind of appreciated his experience. He seems to be more intelligent, maybe, but maybe the kind of dumb act was a put on. But it elevated him into almost a world power figure, where he's influencing political decisions. Like, it's really astonishing when you read through it.
Yeah, if you take yourself, anybody who interacts with somebody in those levels, just like Epstein was doing, he was emailing himself conversations that they had, like a document trail. And people who do that, anybody who works in upper echelon corporate America or within state jobs, you're supposed to kind of document stuff. You want to do an email. Hey, this is a recap from our conversation. And these kinds of things are designed to be a paper trail. And that's what he was doing. He was crafting his own paper trail. Unto what ends, right? Because, he was suicided. And, is he? There's all sorts of stuff going on that he's, alive and well. And it's just like, I don't really know if that's true, because the easiest way to kind of get rid of some of this is to off the guy that could say the most and then do what they did with Ghislaine Maxwell. Just get rid of the people who have the most to say. And then when the documentation is made available, they didn't even have to say there was documentation. Right? I mean, that's the thing. They could have just, nope, there was nothing. Nobody had to say anything about any kind of documentation. They could have kept it in the dark. But I really believe it was a nose. They're just thumbing their noses at it.
Yeah, no, it's astonishing. It's interesting. I'm pretty sure Epstein, I would say with 99% accuracy, he's dead. They wanted him dead. That's why they arrested him, is to get him in a confined space and kill him. But it's interesting because in the files too, if you look up the word past, PASSED, there's a document where Epstein says that Robert Maxwell was passed away. So it's an interesting way to phrase it, which means that Epstein believed or knew that his henchman's dad was killed. So he must have known that he could go the way too. He could go that route. But yeah, it's just, let me see if I can share this. I found this interesting thing today of Jess Staley. He's part of the network. But here he is walking into court. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that?
I could see it. Yeah.
And that's him making the sign of silence. That's all masonry.
Yes, he is. Because nobody puts their finger up like that on their nose. That's the sign. That's silence right there. I know what that is.
Yeah. It's occult or Masonic or whatever you want to call it.
It is.
Crowley would do this stuff too. So it shows like some kind of initiation. That's the head of Morgan Stanley.
Right.
That's not like the accountant on floor 3 and at a cubicle somewhere in the middle of a building. That's the guy at the executive office.
Yeah. So. There's so much going on. I mean, there's like Keith Frankel. I mean, this is kind of an interesting development. Keith Frankel was in a photograph with none other
Who's
than...
that? I don't even know who that is.
Yeah, he was in a photograph with Pam Bondi, and that was in the Epstein files.
Oh, wow.
And so when you start looking at, or excuse me, let me retract that. She was in a photo with Keith Frankel, and he is mentioned several times in the Epstein files. So it's kind of an interesting thing and what's going on. And we know that Pam Bondi took some acting lessons. And so there's quite a bit of information and things going on within the system of propaganda that is designed to obfuscate not just the secret society aspect of it and the ritual abuse, but to dissuade the average American from saying something.
I think so. I think that's kind of also kind of a technique of the cult, is to atomize people and also kind of like gaslight them and mock them, and I think they can get away with it. I think that a lot of secrecy, maintenance of secrecy and stuff like that, just like Staley, is like they can do it. So I think that they really don't want us to know these truths. And, the connections to the Pizzagate, what's called the Pizzagate affair, which really should be called like the Alefantis Network, because that was a bunch of people too. The connections are very overt. Like, it's pretty obvious that these code words and stuff that they were using back then are validated through this, which we have new code word understandings that maybe we should go back and look at Alefantis's files again and see if there's any of those there. Because that would be the Satanism. And then, you can see Alefantis clearly is, they're still children, like in weird positions and taped up, and Haitian sauce. Like they talk about shrimp sauce or, sauce in the Epstein files. But the whole idea of like keeping people in the dark, I think, is really a secret society view and kind of the satanic view, worldview that pervades all of these secret societies, possibly, that I've researched, that as far as I can understand, going back in time, because they're seen as and this is cult behavior too. Almost every cult, they see themselves as special. They're set apart for whatever reason. I'm 144,000 people going to heaven. I'm part of the Lost Tribes of Israel. I'm special. And you're not. You're a muggle. You are profane or something like that. So I think you see this in the Epstein thing, where literal, like, treating people like disposable objects. And there's a picture that was redacted of a younger woman, but she's in an exercise kind of place, acting like a chair. And I think maybe at first glance, people just think she was being posed in a compromising position. But for me, looking through Kubrick and things like that, and some of these other things, I think that that's a symbolic representation of how these guys get off on the power of making somebody look like a piece of furniture. So I think that's kind of like a real thing within these cult system, that people get brought into these cults, and you can see that played out over and over on this this Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell things, where they're just industrial scale usage and manipulation of kids wherever they can find them, interlocking. Like, I mean, it's not funny, but places like camps in Michigan, girls at pools at Mar-a-Lago, going to the same high school and like, get your friends, I'll pay them $200 too for these massages. Right. So it's always that, come on in for a massage, but then it gets darker and darker and darker. So I think, to kind of answer your question, I think it's part of the dynamic, is this, using of other people.
Yeah, there was, see, this is in the news too. Some of the schools, the most recent one was like East Texas. So there was a school in East Texas that dropped Life Touch, and they did student photos because the founder of that has ties to Jeffrey Epstein. And so it's like, I mean, I was a kid. I had my photograph taken every single year through just grade school, just K through 5th grade, never beyond that. And that was kind of an interesting thing. You could have the photos taken for later on through all the way out through school, but there was just a real big focus of doing it when you were a small child.
The Life Touch thing is really one of the creepier aspects of it, because Life Touch is owned by Shutterfly, and these guys are all kind of investors. Jeffrey Epstein was a big-time investor, investing in different things, promoting certain things. His friend Leon Black is the head of the Apollo Fund, and that's who owned Shutterfly, or had a huge investment in Shutterfly up until recently, I think, up until the last 5 years. So they had access, I assume, to all those pictures of kids. And in one of these files, there is a thing of Jeffrey Epstein going to Juarez, which is the border town between, it's on the other side of El Paso, right? It's very desert. It's not, a guy like Epstein, that would be probably one of the last places that he would go for vacation or business. So what's the question? What's he in Juarez, and what do you know Juarez for? And that is this femicide events that's really unique to Juarez, where 2,000 women, they think, always young, right? Jeffrey Epstein's kind of target, 14, 15-year-old kids, teenagers, disappeared, and horrible, the testimony is just like the worst. Like, horrible stuff happens to them, and then they're killed off. And that's how they bind together. They used to just say it was a cartel thing, right? And that's the way the cartels. But what the interesting aspect, not interesting, one of the really sinister aspects of this is that a lot of the girls, they tied them together to this training facility where they would go in because they wanted computer training. They want to better themselves. They go to this computer facility and put their names and pictures and everything. And they think that some of these perpetrators who've never really been caught, and like the prosecutors got shot, another guy got chased down and shot, like they're dead. But they think that the perpetrators were scoping these girls through their pictures, which makes the influence of Life Touch even more harrowing. We don't know the totality of like how bad it is, but there's other things in these files. A girl from Oklahoma. There's supposedly 2 dead bodies in New Mexico. When Jeffrey Epstein got indicted, he ordered that same day 6 55-gallon drums of sulfuric acid. Like, what is going on? Like, people said, well, he wanted it for the water facilities there. Why did he choose it the same day he got indicted? And why does he need 6 55-gallon drums? And, it's all, you can do things for a cover. Like, you don't just like, hey, Bob, can I have those 6 55-gallon drums of sulfuric acid and give me a receipt and, deliver it to me in the back of your truck? No, you say it's for the pool, but there's dual uses and stuff like that. So,
yeah, sulfuric acid is the only acid strong enough to dissolve human bones. Right?
These are cover-ups, man. It's really bad. It's really bad stuff. And, Yeah, go ahead.
The other thing I was going to say too is on that one specifically with the sulfuric acid and the island. I don't think those two are really related. I think it's somewhere else with the sulfuric acid because there's deep that whole island's surrounded by really deep water. It wouldn't really be that hard to, you know what I'm saying? Just use the ocean to make bodies disappear.
And they had submarines and boats and all kinds of stuff, you know. They actually, one of the interesting things about his plane, he had a Gulf Stream, but I think he had a larger plane, but it was one of those unique planes that the back could actually open in flight. And like, why would you need to have that, you know? Like you specifically have a plane for that. So who knows what they could chuck out the back, drugs or whatever. People.
Yeah, some of the other things was kind of interesting was, and just kind of, you know, tying things together. Peggy Siegel, Siegel? Maybe it's Siegel. Don't know. She had offered to bring a couple of children from Africa to Epstein. As a wrote, I can bring you a child or two in an email. That's one of the emails. So it's kind of an interesting, you know, it's more of that evidence that there's child trafficking going on. And you were right about a classification of people. Not only was it like, hey, we're in this cult, but there's also, Epstein also had a real big tie-in with identifying him as a certain race of individuals who called everybody else goyim. And so they are worth, you know, it's everybody else that's not them is an animal, and that means that you're not really doing any kind of abuse.
Right. And behind him, like on his desk, was the full Talmud, you know. It's not just one book, it's like an encyclopedia. So it makes sense. And I don't think he would ever have wanted that to become public, but that attitude, like there's no Jewish victims. I couldn't find one like girl named Rachel Goldstein or Goldberg or just as obvious names. Siegel for another, you know, these kind of standard Jewish names. They're just not there as victims of the thousands of victims. I mean, I used to say 300 or 400. I was wrong. It was much bigger. Just some people haven't come public, and a lot of women who are victimized with kids and stuff, they just chalk it up to have bad, you know, they had a bad childhood or bad experience and move forward. And some of them want to stay Jane Does, you know, they want to stay anonymous, which you can't blame them. So, but yeah, no Jewish kids too, which I think is a huge tell. And a lot of his kind of inner circle seemed to be Jewish. And he knew some of these guys were bad news, like Woody Allen, and they're around him, Leon Black, and those are ones that come to mind.
Some of the bigger names that have been big time involved in scandals of their own already.
Right. Yeah. Leon Black, I think he's been in some civil litigation, is my understanding.
Yeah, then there's, you know, on the topic of someone like Ghislaine Maxwell, is I do believe that she was victimized as a kid, and then she turned around and started trafficking. And if that can be one person, it can be dozens of the victims, the you know, women who are turned into traffickers themselves.
That's a really interesting. It's a great question, and I think they deliberately did that. Like I mentioned earlier, how like one girl would say, "Then I'll go to your high school and get them, and I'll give you money." One of the people who popped up in the old files with Clinton, and I think she was associated to the Pizzagate, was a girl by the name of Rachel Chandler, and she was kind of infamous because she's pictured with Eminem and Diddy, who we found out later was involved in a lot of this crazy stuff too, right? But she turns up in the Epstein files, and there are FBI reports. So like one of the interesting things is the FBI is getting reported like, hey, you can go look it up right now. Rachel Chandler is over at the beach. I see her all the time. I think she's involved in Epstein. She's wearing a mask. She's wearing a mask, or she's wearing like a costume to keep from being seen. I saw her. And nothing ever happened. I can probably pull that up. It's extraordinary, like some of the stuff that's been revealed that they didn't redact. It's really crazy. But I mean, that's just one of these people who now she's old and she's become a like a photographer or something like that. But I'll show you this file. Let's see. This is EFTA 01249179. And she said she saw, this is from 2020, so it's July 2020. Said she saw Rachel Chandler a couple of weeks ago. Looked like she was in hiding. She's connected to Jeffrey Epstein, this pedophile ring. She talked about taking a picture, was fumbling in her purse. She noticed Chandler started to scramble to leave with her child and boyfriend. They didn't mention their names. She was wearing a large striped dress hat yesterday. She used to stop in her store. There's photos of them seen together. Chandler had pictures of naked children not even from this country, and kids with black eyes on her Instagram. She even used a pedophile swirl symbol as an emoji. Her models have black eyes and looks unhappy and messed up. Like, this is like in these reports. So this is validating, other stuff that other people had seen.
Yeah, there's way too much going on. That's I can't sit here and go. I don't believe in coincidences. I think there's a whole lot more going on. I don't think it's merely very surface level. I really think that there was some kind of an extension of their religion, whatever it may very well be, some kind of dark occult thing where they worship capital HIM. And so it's
His Infernal Majesty.
You got it. Yes. And the other people saying that Satan is their god and things like that. It's kind of a real
They sure act like
thing.
it.
Right.
They sure act like it. But I mean, the consumption of like these things that are consistent with the cakes of light, I think, are tells like, whoa, you guys are really dark. You're getting dark energy from this. And and the code words are so weird. Grape soda, I figured out today, was gang rape. It sounds like gang rape, right? Grape, gang rape.
Yeah, well, grape is commonly used as the emoji to say rape. So yeah.
Oh, see, I didn't know that either.
Right.
Well, that makes perfect sense. It's consistent. And shrimp, like babies and stuff. Like, I think that they really got dark. And he had a picture that's partially redacted in the files that I saw of a baby. They called it shrimp cocktail. So it's kind of like that's what to them is shrimp, and it's really gross. But kids kind of have rolls of fat.
Right.
So we know from Giuffre, who said that she was taken to the side of the island and said, "We want you to have a baby, and we'll take it, and no questions asked." Like, I don't know what happened. So it seems like that's a thing. That was a thing for them.
Right.
To get babies.
Not just in those, we know of existent cults and survivors of them who talk about being baby mills.
There was Yao of God was doing it. Yao of God was the guy from Brazil, and he supposedly, like, his front was a great healer, and he would do all this healing events, and he was it was a syncretic form of Christianity, supposedly. It was really much more almost like Blavatskyism or, where the ascended master type stuff. And then underneath it all was this guy was a full on, making money, selling water, magic water, and hitting on all the women like a sexual abuser. And then they found out he was operating baby mills with these kids. It seemed to be selling them or whatever. I don't even know. And then some woman came forward and she's like, I'm in hiding in Spain. And she ended up dead. Like somebody, she's like, they're going to kill me. So maybe she's part of this whole network too. And that's what's really scary, is that these like international criminals are connected and there's crimes happening multi-jurisdictionally. And so for me, I've said it before, this is a matter of national security, really. Like, people are flying around some serial killers back in the 70s and 80s, they would go from state to state because they know that they could like mess up the law enforcement. And these guys are like that, but they're not going from state to state in the US. They're going country to country. So they're leaving. I mean, it's the perfect way to do crimes too. One of the things, like, I've studied the smiley face killers for way too much time and way too long. But one of the first the first case that I studied was a young guy named Joey LaBute in Columbus. And when he disappeared, it was during the Arnold Schwarzenegger, classic, which is a bodybuilding thing. So people fly in for the week and it's like a convention, like 50,000 people fly in, and it's like the perfect way to commit a crime. You like fly in, commit your crime, and then go wherever you're from, Vail or outside of the country. So it makes sense that these kind of these are, I mean, the Epstein files are redolent with just crime after crime after crime after crime after crime. So it makes sense that they would be doing it internationally.
It's really interesting as Russia has not been identified in the Epstein files. Right. And that's kind of an interesting note.
To their credit. I just played that. Did you remember or recall, or are you aware of Putin calling the vampire ball over?
Yes.
Did you ever see that video? Because that's the way that I likened the Epstein network is the vampire ball. I do think I think that he must have known something, because these are vampires. They're like literal human vampires. Maybe I can play this for you, just for the audience, because I think some of these things are like, they're meant for us to, the American public we're totally kept in the dark.
Right.
We're like mushrooms. You ever hear the mushroom analogy?
That's right.
You're left in the dark and fed, what?
That's right. It's one thing to really look at this and see, this is the behavior. These are the actions. This is exactly what's going on. And at the same time, see, this is the other thing that's really interesting, is historically speaking, us more common people are really quick to say that the elites are acting in an occult way. And so it becomes like this propaganda thing that, the elite are just in some kind of occult religion, and you guys just really don't understand, their culture. And it's like, no, they are in an occult religion, and they do things that are very heinous, and they promote things that are so taboo that it would make most of us vomit.
It's really that bad. Really is. I mean, it's just off the charts. And it's interesting, like Crowley, he is it coming through there? No. He called himself the priest to the princes. And remember, he always said the slave shall serve. So you see all that, but like, I think that's what he meant. He, in my book, Prophet of Evil, from 15 years ago, it's still kind of relevant. He made this statement, like, never deal with the muck of the mire. Find the diamonds and polish them. And what he meant was find the really smart elite type people, educated. At his time, that would be Oxford and Cambridge, and then make them into your own. But don't have anything. He was a total snob. Like, he was not an egalitarian at all. And like, it was just always, these elite people that he wanted to be around or make part of his cult. And that was it, And he's such a nasty character.
Yeah, I really would like to, we talk about the Epstein. I really wonder what's on the Crowley files. You know what I mean? It's like, This guy probably, it may not be documented, but the things and the stuff that he would have known about anybody on the planet would have been horrendous.
Yeah. See, I think that you can kind of make those analogies or connections between Epstein and Crowley, because he's doing the same ritual. So he's seeing all these people. He knows who they really are. He knows if they've eaten the cakes of light. He knows that the dark magic, or if they've drank blood. Like, it's hard to believe that this is real, but it is. And the more you kind of study the cult, you see these guys really do drink blood. Like, oh my God, this guy drinks blood. Like, Damien Eccles drinks blood. There's this guy from not sure, it's Jodorowsky. You ever hear of his name? He's a French filmmaker. He made Holy Mountain, totally occult film. But you start reading through his stuff, he's a full-on occultist. He believes in the tarot. And there's statements of him, I drank blood. It tasted so good. Human blood. My skin was radiant. Like, he literally thinks that it's like making him younger or healthier. And he officiated at Marilyn Manson's, wedding. So in his alchemy outfit too. So Jodorowsky's known, like, he's a cultural figure, like, amongst those people, not Christians, but. So, like, these occultists, man, if they get farther and farther up, you're looking at human sacrifice, drinking blood, and all this dark ritual stuff for power. You do it so and that's the whole thing about that correlates with Epstein and Crowley, is that their desire for power over people, magical power. Like, you don't know who in some of these files, he's like, Epstein's like, I will, I'm going to get vengeance or something like that. Like I believe in massive response or so, it's not like turning the other cheek like, oh, it's okay. He made a mistake or he's having a bad day. I believe in massive. I got to find that quote. Like sometimes you read this and you're like, whoa. And sometimes I pass over it, but like he really talked about that nastiness that Crowley is reflected in Crowley and in the Book of the Law. If you remember the Horus part of the Book of the Law, it's really bad.
Yeah, there's so many things going on within this, besides grooming. I mean, grooming is an obvious thing here. Human sex trafficking is a thing here. And the whole time, this is what's really interesting, is the whole time Jim Caviezel is putting together his own film about human trafficking, this is going on.
Right. Wow, that's amazing.
If you stop and you think, and you're like, good goodness, these higher level politicians of the United States, the presidents of the United States, are involved in human sex trafficking, maybe in either directly or third party affiliation. I can't say one way or the other, just to be honest. But the thing is I tell people, if someone's name appears a million times in a book, the story's probably about them.
Right. I mean, it implicates the entire political system, this whole thing. It's really bad. And then we just went through a thing with Biden, who they call a clone in the Epstein files. You can find their quote of him. It's under Biden, not under his accurately spelled name. It's Bidan. But if you type that into the search bar, you'll see they call him like a clone. But under him, man, there's like the borders were gone. There was no border, southern border. You could just come in whatever you want. It's totally crazy. Like it's absolute like barbarian lawlessness and trafficking and kids disappearing. And you could see, I mean, it was industrial because they're like the kids were drugged and brought into country for God knows what. Like, is it sex trafficking? Like I've done a lot of shows. Apparently, sex trafficking has now outgrown drug trafficking as like the number one moneymaker worldwide, because you can have sex with kids or prostitutes or over and over and resell it. So the drugs, you smoke weed or whatever, meth, it's gone. But if you're a pimp or like one of these people, you can just, if they're, it's really bad. So it's like, wow, this is like not a Christian country anymore in the worst way. And I think the tolerance for Epsteinism and the Epstein network is indicative of that.
Yeah, the entire time there's just enough going on and just enough people saying, hey, we should move past that. The only people who say things like that are guilty.
I think these are all tells, like people minimizing or going after people, or just the whole kind of black bag of like black propaganda in the face of this kind of evil is a real tell for me. And like either the things that they tried to do to say, hey, these are the Epstein files back in March of 2025, like makes all those people look even worse. Like they looked bad at the time, and now that the actual files are out, they look like they're all compromised or something, or worse, like they're in on it, to me, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the scariest part about the revelations is the fact that if everybody within those is dealt with in legal terms, the systems that operate and control the country would collapse. And the idea behind that, I mean, it's kind of like, that's Pam said that, but that's true. It's like, why would it collapse? Why is it going to collapse?
Right? It's like a follow-on question. Why? But why is it? It's so true. It's so simple. But people can't comprehend the consequences, right? The conclusion. Like, why would it collapse? Who cares? Because they're all in it. That's the whole thing. They've all been compromised or part of the system, or been brought in, or they, Imagine like being an intel person with a spreadsheet. Like if you work at the Mossad or the CIA or the FBI, and all the people that who are like, imagine the power of Hoover just collecting information. They just had information come out within the last week where they were like scoping people without criminal charges. So they were just like, I think that's real. I think the FBI just collects information and dirt on people just to do it, even though it's illegal and there's no, probable cause or no, proper criminal procedure. So imagine like the power these guys or Epstein have. It's just like, I know him. I've got stuff on him. I know what he does. I know his taste. So he said that about somebody, the pinch. There was some guy in there who was a rich dude. And he's like, oh, the pincher. Like, so I don't know what he was doing, pinching people, or he did some kind of naughty technique or whatever. But like, he seemed to, he knew people's proclivities, to say the least.
Right. And that's what we've got. We literally have a RICO case, dude.
Yeah, huge.
It's a huge RICO, global. Because, I mean, there was recently an individual in the Middle East, I can't remember which country it was, that was responsible for sending the torture email, the torture video to dude.
Right, that's right. He was like a huge logistics guy or something like that. And he's paid, once people figured it out, they're like, oh man, he's pictured with a lot of these people. So, yeah, it's a massive RICO case. I mean, there could be lawyers out there. It's a civil case too. You could do civil RICO. I mean, one of the interesting things is how there used to be a cause in equity in the law. It was called a key. That's Latin. It's called quitam. Are you familiar with that? It's called quitam. It's QUI, and then the next word is TAM, and it represents in the name of the king. So you could bring kind of suits against, like if money got stolen or something, you could bring suits in the interest of recovering that money and giving it back to the king and taking a cut of it. And they could do something like this where like this money's stolen, or, I mean, the amount of payouts for people who don't know, I mean, the number of money, like this is like flies in the face of Kash Patel, but they paid out, $800 million to the victims of a so-called non-trafficking enterprise. So
Right.
$800 million has been paid out.
Right, for something that they didn't do.
Right, or like there's no perpetrator. So that means 800 was paid out for just people Jeff was, brutalizing, or it doesn't make any sense. It's just so obviously transparently baloney. So your tax dollars are not at work, actually. It's just incredible. Like they're just so brazenly lying and covering it up. It's just like, how can you take it? Like I don't know how we can take it, especially people with a conscience. If people with a really like primed conscience, they must be having a really bad time, because the sociopaths, they're like, who cares, But like people who care about kids growing up happy and unmaimed, like they're, and especially I think women, like I think the effect on women is because the women are the abused. I don't think they're going to get past this. I don't think the women in America are going to get past it. Like once they realize how bad it is, they're going to be like, well, that's why some of the most ferocious people in Congress right now are the women. Mace and the other, Green was one of them. And she left. She got the hell out of there probably with her life. And the other girl from Colorado, whose name I can't remember. But those were conservative, so-called conservative right-wingers.
Yeah, man, it's just something going on. I'm not thinking that there's, it's stuff like this that has led other countries into revolutions, from France to Russia to beyond. When the upper echelon of individuals are acting in such a way where there's clearly no support and stuff for the lower classes, that's just become this massive difference between literally the richest person and the poorest person. It's the biggest amount. And it's just so sad and ridiculous. I mean, what are we looking at now? They arrested the former prime minister in Norway. I mean, that's one step. What else is to come? Do we expect to see anything?
There are criminal investigations that have started up. So in other countries, I think France, Spain. So like there are people, they actually took action. Like, it's really crazy. The Epstein files drop at January 30th. And then they actually, within a couple of weeks, they're like, okay, we got enough information for a criminal investigation. I don't have the names of those countries offhand, but I remember reading like 3 or 4. So the geopolitical effects of Epstein are very important. And I've actually made this comment on my social media. And if you want a good history for people who are listening, go check out my X-File all the way from January 30th to the present, because there's a lot of information there. But I said that the geopolitical analysts are going to look really kind of superficial by not addressing the geopolitical effects of this network and how it has, because these guys are making investments to profit off of political events. That's what people don't get, is that what's happening is the financial elements of these political events is what's important. So like the politics is following these moves of investment moves and stuff like that. And, you know, people haven't looked into they haven't done the forensic accounting of all the stuff yet, but wait till Epstein gets tied into like BlackRock or Vanguard
right.
or some of these other things. It's just Palantir. TL's already there in the files. They just haven't, I mean, it's just incredible, Brandon. Like, they've made it so it's very hard, it's onerous and tedious to look through it, but there's a whole nother 3 million documents out there. Like, those are the bad ones that they held back. Like, these are terrible what they put out.
Right.
Like, can you imagine what the hell is in the others 3 million files?
Yeah. There's got to be some agents who are dealing with this that are throwing up.
Oh, no,
it's just disgusting.
Yeah,
well,
I think just to finish up, but I think there's like good guys on the inside who are working for the DOJ, and they deliberately put stuff out unredacted. Like, I do think some of it's literally deliberate. Like, oh, I'll just screw this up here.
Well, not only that, but some of those redactions they're done digitally, and if you turn a PDF into an audio file, you can actually listen to the names in it. There's all sorts of really strange stuff. So, and I'm pretty sure that's being done intentionally too.
Wow,
all right,
I didn't know that.
Cool, William. I appreciate you coming back and talking to me about this, man.
Yeah, great to talk with you. Thanks for having me.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Thank you for listening. This is a free podcast based upon the value for value model. If you find value in this, or any episode, you can return that value by liking the show, subscribing to this channel, leaving a review, or sharing with a friend on your social media accounts. You can also donate on my website. Thank you again. This is BT for Truth and Shadow Podcast. You are the light in the darkness.
It's a very strange, funny time where everybody would love to be able to be themselves if they can.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
It's time. They knew, and they let it happen. 2 kids. We gotta nail these scumbags. We gotta show people that nobody can get away with this.
You take the red pill. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. You stay in Wonderland. Believe whatever you want to believe.
Fight every battle, everywhere, always. In your mind.
What you do, what you become is not my concern. The world is full of so-called men like you. And in a perfect world, everything we do comes with a price. This ain't a perfect world. People do bad things. Most of the time it goes unpunished. This ain't one of them times.
Every possible series of events is happening all at once. Live that way, and nothing will surprise you. Everything that happens will be something that you've seen before.
Because they must fall in line with the person who follows them. You want to live that kind of life? I wish you the best. I'll be on the other side somewhere.
You
like being in other people's business.
Trying very hard not to be, but you make it very challenging for me.
You should stay out of things that are not your concern. Yeah, it's bad for you, right?
Lord knows I'm allergic to bad things.
You warning me?
I'm preparing you.
You out of your mind. You out of your damn mind. I am a United States Senator. Exactly.
Well, remember this, ladies and gentlemen. It's an old phrase, basically anonymous. But politicians are a lot like diapers. They should be changed frequently, and for the same reason. Keep that in mind next time you vote.
The truth. Nothing more.